A human guard arrives, and the alien queen freezes. He resembles her lost husband. The great hall of the Zellerian Empire was silent in a way that only ancient power could demand. The ceiling rose so high it disappeared into shadows, its surface alive with slow-moving lights that reflected the thoughts of the Empire's rulers. Long banners of living fabric floated without wind, glowing softly in colors that marked victory, order, and control. At the center sat Queen Istra. She had ruled for more than 600 cycles. To her people, she was not only a monarch but a constant, unchanging, distant, eternal. Her face showed no emotion, her posture was flawless, and her mind was trained to never linger on the past. Today was meant to be routine. A defeated species was being processed. Humans. They were new to the galactic stage, loud, emotional, and stubborn. Their resistance had surprised many commanders, but surprise did not mean danger. The Empire had broken stronger civilizations before. Queen Istra had not planned to attend the arrival of the human delegation. Prisoner transfers were beneath her attention, yet something, an instinct she had not felt in centuries, had drawn her to the hall. She told herself it was nothing. Rows of human captives were escorted inside, their restraints light, symbolic more than necessary. They walked upright despite exhaustion, eyes scanning the hall with curiosity rather than fear. That alone annoyed several nobles watching from the balconies. Then the guards followed. Tall figures in ceremonial armor lined the path, but among them was one human guard assigned by imperial order. He was there as a gesture, proof that humans could already be trusted with responsibility under Zellerian control. The moment Queen Istra saw him, her thoughts stopped. Her breath caught, though no sound escaped. Her vision narrowed, the glowing banners dimming as if the hall itself reacted to her shock. The human guard was tall, broad-shouldered, moving with calm confidence. His steps were measured, his head held at a precise angle. It was not just his face. It was everything. The way he stood, the way his eyes observed without judgment, the slight pause before each movement as if weighing consequences before action. It was him, impossible, illogical, unacceptable. Her long-dead husband had stood like that. Queen Istra's fingers tightened on the armrest of her throne. The material beneath them hardened, reacting to the surge of emotion she had failed to suppress. Several court officials shifted uneasily. They could sense something was wrong. The human guard stopped at his position, eyes forward, unaware that the most powerful being in the Empire was staring at him as if seeing a ghost. Her husband had been gone for 400 cycles, lost during a failed expedition beyond mapped space. His body was never recovered. His mind, his voice, his presence, erased by time and duty, or so she believed. She searched the human's features for differences. His skin tone was wrong. His facial structure was human, not Zellerian. Yet the expressions, the micro-movements, the quiet strength behind stillness, it all matched memories she had locked away. This was not resemblance, this was recognition. The queen forced herself to breathe. The hall stabilized as she regained control. No one spoke, no one dared. The human delegation bowed as instructed. The guard remained still, eyes focused ahead, neither submissive nor defiant. Respectful, that made it worse. Her husband had never bowed easily either. The ceremony continued, words spoken by officials that Queen Istra barely heard. Her mind raced through possibilities. Genetic mimicry, advanced disguise, forbidden cloning, time displacement, none made sense. Humans were too young a species, too chaotic, too emotional, and yet. As the human guard shifted his weight slightly, his hand moved in a small, unconscious gesture, fingers curling once, then resting again. The same habit. Istra's composure cracked. A low ripple of energy spread across the hall as her throne reacted to her emotional spike. The banners flickered, several nobles gasped. The queen raised one hand, the hall froze. "Pause," she commanded, everything stopped. The human prisoners froze mid-motion, guards locked in place. Only the queen and the human guard were allowed movement. He noticed immediately, eyes flicking upward, alert but calm, that look. She stood slowly, her long robes flowing like liquid light. Each step she took echoed through the hall. She descended from the throne and walked closer. The human guard felt the weight of her presence now. He did not tremble, he did not reach for a weapon, he simply stood ready as if meeting an equal. She stopped a few steps away. "Identify yourself," she said. "Guard Elia's ward," he replied. His voice was steady, respectful. "Assigned to Imperial Security Detail." The accent was wrong, the tone was not. Her husband used to speak like that, clear, measured, honest. "How long have you studied Zellerian culture?" she asked. Elias paused for a fraction of a second before answering. "Since first contact, about 12 standard years." 12 years, her husband had mastered the same behaviors in 10. "Why?" she pressed. "Because understanding others reduces mistakes," Elias said simply. That was it. That exact sentence had once been spoken to her under a foreign sky long before she became queen. Istra stepped back as if struck. The court erupted into whispers. Officials looked at each other in confusion and fear. This was not how the queen behaved. She turned sharply. "Resume," she ordered. Time flowed again. The ceremony concluded in hurried silence. The humans were escorted away, but Elias was separated quietly, guided down a different corridor by elite guards. He did not resist. He did not ask why. Queen Istra watched him leave, her mind torn between disbelief and a grief she had buried for centuries. In her private chamber later, surrounded by walls that reacted only to her thoughts, she finally allowed herself to remember. Her husband had believed empathy was strength. That leadership without understanding was hollow. Those beliefs had nearly shattered the empire when he voiced them. After his disappearance, those ideas were erased. And now a human stood wearing them like a second skin. She summoned her chief scientist, her intelligence overseer, and the empire's oldest memory keeper. "Analyze him," she commanded. "Mind patterns, behavioral similarities, everything." The results returned faster than expected. The similarity was not genetic, it was cognitive. Humans, it seemed, had evolved an unusual trait. Their minds adapted deeply when studying others. They did not just memorize behavior, they internalized perspective, emotional modeling, moral alignment. They became, in part, what they studied. To humans, this was normal. To the Empire, it was terrifying. Elias Ward was not unique among his species. He was simply thorough. The Queen dismissed her advisors and stood alone in the chamber, staring at a projection of Elias standing calmly under observation. He was not her husband, but he carried the echo of him. And for the first time in centuries, Queen Istra felt something dangerous stir within her. Hope Queen Istra did not sleep. Zellerian rulers did not often need rest, but when they did, it was usually calm and controlled. This cycle was different. Her thoughts would not settle. Memories long sealed behind duty and time kept rising without permission. She stood in her private observation chamber, watching the human guard through a transparent energy wall. Elias Ward sat alone in a quiet room. He was not restrained. He was given water, food, and a seat that adjusted to his body without discomfort. He had thanked the attendant. That detail stayed with her. Most prisoners asked questions, some demanded answers, some tried to hide fear. Elias did none of those things. He observed. He waited. He accepted uncertainty without anger, just like him. Queen Istra tightened her hands behind her back. This human did not know who he resembled. That much was clear. There was no deception in his mind, no hidden agenda. Her mind readers had confirmed it. His thoughts were orderly, focused, and surprisingly calm. When questioned internally about the Empire, he did not imagine rebellion or escape. He imagined understanding. That alone unsettled her advisors. She finally entered the room. The energy field dissolved silently. Elias stood at once, posture straight but not rigid. "Your Majesty," he said, bowing his head just enough to show respect. "You are not required to bow," Istra replied. He straightened without comment. She studied him up close now. The details became clearer. His eyes were different from her husband's, human eyes, softer in shape. His skin lacked the subtle glow of Zellerian biology, yet the presence remained. "Do you know why you are here?" she asked. "No," Elias said honestly, "but I assume it matters." That answer almost made her smile. "Most assume danger first," she said. "Danger exists whether we assume it or not," he replied. "Understanding usually helps more." There it was again. Istra turned away and walked slowly across the room. "You speak as if you have lived among my people for many cycles." "I studied your history," Elias said. "Your philosophy, your failures, your strengths." "Failures," she repeated. "Yes," he said calmly, "they teach more." The Queen stopped. "You do not fear speaking this way to me." "I respect you," Elias corrected. "Fear makes people lie, that helps no one." She faced him again. "You remind me of someone?" He hesitated, careful but curious. "Then I hope the reminder is not painful." Her breath caught for just a moment. "It is complicated," she said. She activated a projection. An image appeared between them, an old Zellerian male, tall and composed, eyes thoughtful, posture calm. Elias looked at the image. For the first time since arriving, his expression changed. "That's strange," he said slowly. "How so?" Istra asked. "He stands like I do," Elias said. "I mean his balance, his stance, it's familiar." "Do you know this individual?" she asked, already knowing the answer. "No," Elias said, "but I feel like I would have respected him." The room felt very quiet. "That was my husband," Queen Istra said. Elias immediately lowered his head. "I'm sorry for your loss." "He vanished centuries ago," she continued. "He believed the Empire needed empathy. He believed understanding others was not weakness." Elias looked back at the image. "I agree with him." Several advisors watching from hidden observation points stiffened. "You agree," Istra said carefully, "with a belief that nearly tore this empire apart." "Yes," Elias replied, "because suppressing empathy doesn't remove it. It only makes it come back in worse ways." Silence followed. "You are aware," she said, "that your species was defeated." Elias nodded. "Militarily, yes, and yet you speak as if you expected to be here." "We did," he said. That caught her attention fully. "Explain," the Queen said. Elias took a breath. "Humans learned early that fighting what we don't understand usually ends badly. When we realized your empire did not destroy us completely, we suspected you were not cruel, only distant." "That is a generous interpretation," Istra said. "Distance can feel like cruelty to those below it," Elias replied gently. The Queen studied him for a long time. "You allowed yourselves to lose," she said. "Yes," Elias answered. "We sent observers, not conquerors." "You risked extinction." "We risked misunderstanding," he said. "Extinction was always possible anyway." Her advisors erupted in silent alarm behind the walls. "That is not how empires think," Istra said. "Humans aren't an empire," Elias replied. "We're a collection of survivors." Istra dismissed the observers with a gesture. She wanted this moment unshared. "You are dangerous," she said quietly. Elias shook his head. "No, I'm patient." That was worse. She turned back to the projection of her husband. "He believed the same things you do," she said. "He believed that strength without compassion would hollow us." "And was he wrong?" Elias asked. The Queen closed her eyes. For the first time in centuries, she answered honestly. "No." She opened them again. "My people forgot his lessons because they were inconvenient." Elias nodded. "That happens often. You speak as if humanity has never forgotten." "Oh, we forget constantly," he said. "That's why we write things down. That's why we teach history, even the parts that shame us." Istra felt something shift inside her. "What would humanity do," she asked, "if it ruled an empire like mine?" Elias thought carefully. "Probably fail a few times," he said. "Then listen, then adjust, slowly." "And power?" she asked. "We'd try not to worship it," he said. "That never ends well." The Queen laughed. It was quiet, brief, and shocked even herself. No one had made her laugh in 400 cycles. She deactivated the projection. "You are free to leave this chamber," she said, "but not the palace." "I understand," Elias said. As he turned to go, she spoke again. "You are not my husband," she said. "I know," Elias replied, pausing. "But you remind me why I loved him," she continued. Elias turned back, meeting her gaze without fear. "Humans don't replace the past," he said. "We learn from it. Carry it forward." That night, Queen Istra addressed the Empire. She did not speak of surrender or defeat. She spoke of reflection, of stagnation, of forgotten strengths. She announced a halt to human subjugation, a cultural exchange, shared governance experiments. Observers instead of overseers, the court was stunned. Some resisted. Many feared change, but none could deny her authority. As weeks passed, humans worked alongside Zellerians, not as servants, but as listeners. They asked questions others never dared to ask. They adapted without demanding dominance. Slowly, the empire shifted, not because it was forced, but because it remembered itself. Queen Istra often walked the gardens now. Elias sometimes accompanied her, always respectful, always aware of the space between them. She no longer saw her husband when she looked at him. She saw something else, a future that did not require forgetting the past. And across the galaxy, word spread quietly. Humanity was not feared for its weapons. It was feared because it understood what others tried to bury. And it never forgot. Change never arrived loudly in the Zellerian Empire. It moved slowly, like light across stone, almost invisible until it had already altered everything. Months passed after Queen Istra's announcement. The court adjusted its rituals. The councils added human observers, then advisors. Trade routes once controlled by rigid command structures were softened by negotiation and shared planning. At first, many believed it was temporary. Empires, after all, did not change their nature. They waited, they endured, and they returned to old habits. Humans noticed this expectation. They did not challenge it. They worked. Elias Ward continued his duties quietly. He walked palace corridors, stood watch during meetings, and listened far more than he spoke. Other humans followed his example. They did not argue for dominance. They did not demand authority. They asked questions. Why was a system built this way? What problem had it solved long ago? Did it still solve it now? The Zellarians were not used to such questions. Their systems were ancient, layered upon centuries of habit. Most no longer remembered why things were done, only that they were. Humans remembered everything, not because they were perfect, but because they feared repeating mistakes. Queen Istra watched from above as her empire changed shape, not structure, shape. Power still flowed through her. Authority still rested in the throne, but decisions took longer now. They were heavier. They considered outcomes beyond immediate control. At first, she resisted the discomfort. Then she recognized it. This was what her husband had tried to teach. One evening, she stood with Elias in the high gardens where the air was thin and stars stretched endlessly beyond the city's edge. The plants there responded to emotion, glowing faintly as thoughts passed through the space. "They are uneasy," she said, watching distant towers pulse with anxious light. "Change feels like loss," Elias replied, "even when it is." "They fear you," Istra said. "Not me," he corrected. "What we represent." "And what is that?" she asked. "That power can be questioned without being destroyed," Elias said. She was silent for a long time. The Empire's outer regions soon tested her resolve. A subject world resisted new cooperative policies. Its leaders demanded the old authority structures return. They accused humans of weakening the Empire. The court expected force. Queen Istra chose presence. She sent humans and Zellarians together, not soldiers, but negotiators, engineers, cultural historians. They listened. They acknowledged fear. They offered solutions that did not erase identity. It took time. There were setbacks, but the world remained loyal not through fear but through trust. This frightened the Empire more than rebellion ever had. Trust could not be controlled. It could only be maintained. The greatest shift came quietly. Zellarian children began studying human history, not the victories, the failures. They learned about wars that nearly ended humanity, about mistakes repeated until lessons were learned the hard way. About how humans argued endlessly, but kept records so the arguments meant something later. They learned that humans survived not because they were strongest, but because they adapted faster than despair. Queen Istra attended one such lesson in secret. She watched a young Zellarian ask a human teacher why humans still told stories about mistakes centuries old. The teacher answered simply, "Because forgetting them doesn't make us stronger, it makes us fragile." That night, Istra dreamed of her husband for the first time in centuries. He did not speak. He only watched, and he smiled. Resistance still existed. Some nobles plotted quietly, believing the queen had grown weak. They did not act with violence. They acted with influence, trying to undermine trust in subtle ways. Humans noticed. They documented patterns. They shared information openly, not accusations, evidence. When the nobles were confronted, there was no punishment, only exposure. They lost influence because people stopped listening. That terrified the rest. Power that depended on secrecy was no longer safe. One cycle later, the Empire held a gathering unlike any before, not a celebration, a reflection. Species from across the Empire were invited to speak, not to praise the throne, but to describe how the Empire affected them. Some spoke of gratitude, some spoke of resentment, some spoke of fear that still lingered. Queen Istra listened to all of it. She did not interrupt. When it was over, she stood. "The Empire was built to last," she said, "but endurance without understanding becomes a cage." She looked at Elias among the gathered humans. "Humanity reminded us that survival is not enough." The galaxy took notice. Other empires watched closely. They expected collapse, civil war, weakness. Instead, they saw stability deepen, trade improved, rebellions decreased. Innovation increased not through conquest but cooperation. Humanity did not claim credit. That worried everyone. Elias remained a guard. He refused titles. When asked why, he answered honestly, "Someone has to stand still while others change." Queen Istra understood that. One day she asked him a question she had avoided. "When I am gone," she said, "what will humanity do?" Elias thought carefully. "Continue," he said. "Without you, if necessary." She nodded. That was the answer she needed. Years later, when the queen finally stepped away from the throne, the transition was calm. No uprising, no chaos. The empire had learned how to breathe without holding power too tightly. Queen Istra spent her final years walking the gardens, watching children of many species play together, arguing, learning, failing, trying again. Elias visited often. They spoke less now. They did not need to. Across the galaxy, a quiet truth spread. Humanity was not dangerous because it conquered. Humanity was dangerous because it stayed. It learned. It remembered. And once it understood you, it never needed to rule you to change everything. Time moved differently in the Zellarian Empire now. It no longer rushed forward in fear of collapse, nor did it freeze itself in tradition. It flowed, slow and steady, shaped by choice rather than habit. Queen Istra was old, not weak, not fragile, but old in the way mountains were old. She no longer sat on the throne every cycle. Councils met without her presence. Decisions were made, revised, and sometimes undone without fear of punishment. That alone would have been unthinkable once. She watched it all from the garden terraces, where the plants glowed softly in response to her calm thoughts. The empire no longer reflected only her will. It reflected millions of voices. This did not frighten her. It comforted her. Elia's ward stood nearby, as he often did, not as a guard anymore, but not as a ruler either. He wore simple clothing now, without rank markings. He had refused them all. "You could have left," Istra said quietly, watching distant ships cross the sky. "Yes," Elias agreed, "but you stayed." "Yes, why?" he thought for a moment. "Because leaving after change begins can break it." She nodded. "My husband would have said the same." Elias did not respond to that anymore. He had learned when silence was respect. The galaxy beyond the empire had changed as well. Other powers had noticed the shift long ago. At first they sent spies, then diplomats, then observers. They expected weakness. They searched for cracks. They found stability instead, not the sharp, rigid stability of fear, but the deep stability of systems that corrected themselves. Human advisors were invited into foreign courts, not to rule, to explain. They spoke about feedback loops, about admitting error early, about the danger of mistaking obedience for loyalty. Some rulers laughed, some listened. Those who laughed struggled later. Those who listened adapted. Humanity did not expand its territory. That was the most unsettling part. They spread without borders. Their ideas traveled faster than ships. Queen Istra received reports daily. Systems once hostile to the empire now requested mediation rather than conflict. Worlds long silent began communication again. "Your people have become a force," she said one day. Elias shook his head. "We always were, just not the kind that shows up on scanners." Her health declined slowly. She did not hide it. There was no reason to. Succession plans were already in motion, guided by councils that represented many species. The next ruler would not be chosen by blood alone. That was another first. On her final address to the empire, Istra did not stand above the people. She stood among them. "I ruled by certainty," she said, her voice carried softly across the gathering. "I believed control was protection." She paused, steadying herself. "I was wrong." The admission sent a ripple through the crowd. "Control preserves order," she continued. "But understanding preserves life." She looked toward the humans gathered there. "We once believed empathy was weakness. Humanity reminded us it is memory, and memory is survival." When she stepped back, the crowd did not erupt. They reflected. That mattered more. Her final days were quiet. She spent them walking, listening, watching. Elias accompanied her less now, giving her space. When he did visit, they spoke of small things, weather patterns, children arguing in the gardens, old stories that no longer hurt. On her last evening, she asked him to sit beside her. "Promise me something," she said. "Yes," Elias replied without asking what. "Do not let us forget again." He met her gaze. "We won't. Humans are very bad at forgetting what almost destroyed us." She smiled. When Queen Istra passed, the empire did not shake. It breathed. The transition was smooth. Councils guided the process. The new ruler spoke less and listened more. Statues were not raised. Archives were expanded instead. Elias did not attend the private ceremonies. He walked among the people instead, unnoticed by most. That suited him. Years passed, then decades. Human children were born on Zellarian worlds, Zellarian scholars taught on human colonies, languages blended, traditions shifted, not erased, evolved. Eventually, Elias grew old too. Humans aged faster than empires. On his final days, he sat in the same garden where Istra once stood. The plants glowed faintly, responding to thoughts that were calm and complete. A young Zellarian approached him. "You were important," the child said. "Weren't you?" Elias smiled. "I was present. That seems important." "It is," he agreed. When Elias died, there were no grand announcements, just stories. Across the galaxy, those stories spread. About a species that lost battles but won futures. About an empire that remembered itself because humans refused to let it forget. About power that changed the universe not by force, but by staying long enough to understand it. And long after names faded, one truth remained. Humanity did not rule the stars. The stars learned to listen, and that changed everything.